Hello,
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, how are you?
All right, thank God.
So you know that next week, actually, that's the night when we're switching time?
Correct. Presumably, it's going to be Ellie again next week, but
Right.
we'll see. So if he needs me to cover, I'm of course always happy to cover. So wonderful to see everybody on this Motzi Shabbos. Let's just go over where we're up to. We are at near the bottom of today's daf is daf Ayin Vav in Eruvin, and we are currently at the bottom of the Ayin Hayim and Bet. Yesterday, we began the review of the three final cases that the sixth chapter of Eruvin will conclude with. The first of the cases was a chutzner with two houses, one of which is connected with 10 houses. So let's take a quick look at the picture. Hold on, I'll have to share that separately. So stop share screen. Okay, so this is the picture that we're looking at. And we said that the question is who needs to participate in the Eruv for this chutzner? So each of these are 10 different houses. You can see, and the way you get into any of the houses is through this door into the chutzner. And here's the, either the Rosh Hashanah or a Mavoi, and here you have one house, and then you have these 10 houses. And what we learned is that, in fact, there's a special rule for gatehouses, and a gatehouse is not considered a residence, and as a result, somebody who lives in the gatehouse does not need to participate in the Eruv. So that was rule number one. So now we're going to build on that, and we're going to and so the only way out, from the innermost house is through the other 9 houses. And Shmuel says, since a gatehouse is not considered a residence, the outer 9 houses do not need to participate in the Eruv. And Rabbi Yochanan says a gatehouse is only where it serves 2 houses, so the outer 8 houses do not need to participate. Today, we're going to conclude with 2 more related cases. One is, what if you have 2 chatzeros with 3 houses separating between them? And we'll take a look at that picture. Which ones need to participate in the Eruv? And then what if you have 2 chatzeros with 2 houses separated between them? And we'll deal with that situation. Then we're going to begin, God willing, we'll finish the 6th parak, and we're now going to begin the 7th parak of Eruvin. The 7th parak of Eruvin is going to discuss in greater depth the question of multiple chatzerot joining together in an Eruv. And we're going to see several possibilities. Sometimes you're going to have 2 chatzeros where they can have independent Eruvim or join in a single Eruv. Sometimes, however, they can have independent Eruvim, but they cannot join in a single Eruv. And sometimes you have to have them together in a single Eruv, and they can't have independent Eruvim. And we will see each of those as we go through the chapter. The first Mishnah in the 7th chapter is going to address 2 chatzeros with a window between them. And we'll say, what's the qualities of the window in order to enable the 2 to potentially be together? And we'll find that in all situations, even if there's just a window between them, they can have independent Eruvim, and depending on the size of the window and its location, that will determine whether they can also have the possibility of joining in a combined Eruv for the 2 chatzeros together. The Gemara is then going to say, this must be that the Mishnah is like Rabbi Gamliel, because we say that the window has to be bigger than 4 tvachim. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, he's the one who says that lavud applies to anything less than 4 tvachim, as opposed to the Rabbanan, who say that lavud is 3 tvachim. And then we'll say, no, even the rabbis could be that this is not talking about the issue isn't one of, we got to prevent lavud, but rather, we got to create a door, and a door requires 4 tvachim. And so that's why even the rabbis who say you need 3 tvachim, or that anything wider than 3 tvachim won't have lavud apply, still say you need 4 tvachim to make a doorway. So then the Gemara is going to note that the first case of the Mishnah implies the second, so why do we need to teach it? and we'll explain that. And then the Gemara is going to consider a round window, and then we get to do fun mathematics. Looking forward to going through all those math details with you. The Gemara then considers windows between houses rather than between chatzeros, and the question is what's the status there? And then we'll have the next Mishnah, which again involves adjacent chatzeros. A wall between two chatzeros means that they can have independent Eruvin but not join in a single Eruv, which really, I guess, is not a surprise, right? If you have two separate chatzeros with a wall between them, then pretty much you can't have anything. You can't have a single Eruv between those two chatzeros. Now, if there's fruit on top of the wall, the Mishnah tells us, and the wall is 4 tefachim thick, then members of each of Chatzar can go up to the top of the wall and eat the fruit, but you can't bring any down. So what is the story if the wall is less than 4 tefachim thick? Well, then you're going to have to wait for tomorrow to hear that discussion, because that's what the Gemara is going to ask as we begin the Gemara tomorrow. If the wall was breached up to 10 amot, then, between those two chatzeros, then we're going to see in the Mishnah that the two chatzeros can have independent Eruvim or join in a single Eruv. And if the wall is breached by more than 10 amot, then all of a sudden, those two chatzeros, they aren't two chatzeros anymore. It's really just one chatzer. And so as a result, they can join together in one Eruv, but they cannot have independent Eruvim. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And I will leave this up so that you can follow along in case this is helpful. So we are at the bottom of Ayin Hey, Amabet, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Avuha, Amar Rav. So Rav Nachman says, in the name of Rav Bar Avuha, in the name of Rav, Shtei, so this is really Rav speaking, so Shtei Chatzeros, right? So if you have two Chatzeros and 3 houses between them, Zeh Derech Zeh, Benos and Eruva Bazeh. If these come in that house, so let's take a look at the picture because that's going to be helpful. So hold on just a second. Ooh, wait. Ooh. There we go. No. Okay, so we have these two chatzeros, 1 and 2, and there are 3 houses between them. Well, this house, according to everybody, according to House A and House D are gatehouses because they open to House B. So House B can use House A as a gatehouse to Chatzar 1, and House C as a gatehouse to Chatzar 2. And now these people put an Eruv in House B, and these people put an Eruv in House B. Okay, that's what's going to happen. So 2 chatzeros with 3 houses between them, one of them comes to the house, Benos and Eruv Bazeh, and they put it in the middle house, Bazeh Derech Zeh, and the other one comes in, Benos and Eruv Bazeh, and they put another Eruv in the middle house, Zeh, and now we're at the top of Ayin Vav Amud Aleph, Zeh Nasa Beis Shar L'Zeh, so then the house A is a gatehouse to B with respect to Chatzar A, the Zeh Nasa Beis Shar L'Zeh, and gatehouse C is a gatehouse to house B in connection with Chatzar 2. And so MCE, the Zeh Nasa Beis Shar L'Zeh, Hava Le Beis Shemanichen Bo Eruv, and now the middle one, house B, is where everybody places their Eruv, the Ein Tzarich Litzei as a pas, and therefore it doesn't have to be the one that has the bread in it, because if you remember, we saw on this a couple of times this past week that if you are the owner of the house where the Eruv is kept, you do not need to actually contribute to the Eruv, and so as a result, since House B is housing the Eruv for Chatzar 1 and for Chatzar 2, it doesn't even have to participate. So all we need for an Eruv for Chatzar 1 is for these people to put some bread in House B, and for all we need for Chatzar 2 to have an Eruv is for the people in this house to put in Chatzar B, in House B. And now all of a sudden Chatzar 2 will also have an Eruv. And there you have it, and everything will be wonderful. And the question is, the issue is that we have not addressed whether or not you can actually go from Chutzner 1 to Chutzner 2, but each Chutzner would have its own Eruv.
So house A and C don't need to contribute?
House A and C do not need to contribute because House A is a gatehouse for House B, and House C is a gatehouse for House B. So as a result, gatehouses are not considered a residence, and therefore they do not interfere with the usage of, they do not prohibit the chutzner with vis-a-vis their failure to participate in the Eruv.
So there are only 3 halachic houses in here.
Correct. There are only 3 halachic houses in this situation. That's exactly right. Okay, and so now we get to the more complicated situation. So this is a great question that Rechava is going to ask us. So Badiglahu Rechava l'Rabbanan. So Rechava asked the rabbis, hey, what about, let's do this first. What about the following situation? There we go. What about the following situation? Now, let's eliminate one of the houses, and now we only have 2 houses. And then what? What are you going to do? So, because if you put your Eruv in House B, well, one second, House B is a gatehouse for House A vis-a-vis Chutzner 2. And if you put it in House A, one second, House A that's a gatehouse for House B with respect to Chutzner 1. So let's see what happens. So Badig lahu rachva l'Rabbanan. Shtei chatzeros u'shnei batim b'neihem. You have
Why would you just put the Eruv in the 2 end houses?
Well, we're going to see. Well, the point is this? Is there even a second house that is relevant for Eruv purposes, or is this a chutzner with really just 1 house? Well, let's go through it and we'll see.
No pas even necessary.
Correct. Maybe you don't even need any pas. So let's see what the story is. So 2 chutzneros with 2 houses between them. Zeba derek zeb. So this chutzner came through this house. V'zasan eruva bezeh, right? And they put the eruv in the other house. So they put the eruv for chutzner 1 in House B, and they put the eruv for Chutzner 2 in House A. So Kano Eruv Olo. So then the question is, in that situation, did they each acquire an Eruv or not? So Mishabis Lay, Lahu. So do we reckon that each of the houses, Lagabi Dahai Bayis, Lagabi Dahai Beishar, that House B with respect to Chutzner 1 is a house, but with respect to Chutzner 2 is a gatehouse, and House A with respect to Chutzner 1 is a gatehouse, and with respect to Chutzner 2 is a real house, and as a result, everything is fine because you put everything in the right place? Or do we say, Ugabi Dahai Beishar, so Ugabi Dahai Beishar, Ugabi High bias, right? That each one is a house, it's a house with respect to one, and a gatehouse with respect to the others. So, or do we say that no, the problem is that both houses are gatehouses, and so neither Eruv is effective because an Eruv cannot be placed in a gatehouse. So, if both houses are viewed as Eruvim, neither house is effective because neither house joined an Eruv of its chutzner. So because House A did not participate in the Eruv for chutzner A, for chutzner 1, and House B did not participate in the chutzner in the Eruv for chutzner 2, because again, the case that we're being asked about is the Eruv for chutzner 1 is put by the one tall house in House B, and the Eruv for chutzner 2 is put by the tall house in House A. So as a result, we don't have House B participating in the Chutzner 2 Eruv, and we don't have House A participating in the Chutzner 1 Eruv. So essentially, no matter what, if you view both of them as both, so then we're going to have a problem. So Amrulay, the rabbis say, Shnehem lo kano Eruv. Neither of them get an Eruv. So Manafshach, whatever way you deal with it, you're going to have a problem. If you consider both of them to be a gatehouse, so then the Eruv is not valid because, again, you can't put an Eruv in a gatehouse. I'm noticing as a Eruv base shar, Achsadra Merpeses, right? So if someone puts an Eruv in a gatehouse or an Achsadra is like a patio with a covered roof, or a Merpesed is like a porch. So ain't no Eruv. So then it's not a valid Eruv. Bias Mishavislay. And if you consider them a house, so Kamatalta Labias Deloma Arvlay. So then each chutzner ends up with a house that it didn't participate in the Eruv. So Umay Shnavid Rava. So in second, how is this case different from that of Rava? The Amar Rava, because Rava tells us the following case: Amro L'Shayim Seva Aravalenu. So now we're going to. The case, of course, has nothing to do with. I mean, it's still in the concept of Eruvin, but it has nothing to do with houses in Chatzerim. This is another situation where maybe we can treat one thing in two different ways. Because ideally, right? Ideally, in order to make this a valid Eruv, we want house B to be treated as a house for Chutzner 1 and a gatehouse for Chutzner 2. And we want house A to be a gatehouse for Chutzner 1 and a house for Chutzner 2. And if we did that, then we would be wonderful. So now we're going to try and show that we can sometimes treat things in two different ways. So here's the case that Rava has. So you have two people tell somebody, Seva Ariv Aleinu, go and make an Eruv for us. So for person number one, Eruv Alav Miba'od Yom, the guy made the Eruv plenty of time, left on Friday, no problem. Eruv Alav Ben Hashmashos. And then for the other guy, he made an Eruv between during the Ben Hashmashos. Then when the person who for whom the Eruv was made while it was still daytime, so Nachal Eruvo Ben Hashmashos, his Eruv got eaten during Ben Hashmashos. And then the person who had his Eruv created Ben Hashmashos, Nachal Eruvo Mishitakashech, his Eruv got eaten after dark. And yet Rava says, Shneim Kano Eruv, both of the Eruvim are valid. So somehow we're treating the time of Ben Hashmashos both as daytime because the Eruv for the second person was created Ben Hashmashos, and as nighttime because we're treating it as the stuff that was eaten Ben Hashmashos as having been eaten after dark. And yet both of them were considered valid. So why not? Once we can consider one time period as two different things, as both day and night, why not be able to treat one of these buildings as both a gatehouse and a regular house? So Hachi Hashta, what kind of comparison is that? Hazam Suffolk Yamama Suffolk Yalila. There you're talking about whether it's a question of whether it's day or night. Lo Minka or Milsa, that you can't tell. There's no obvious way in which you can tell that for one person it's being treated as day and another person it's being treated as night. But here, when you treat one as a house for this one and as a gatehouse for that one, either Lagabi the high bias, if in relation to this chutzner you're treating it as a house, Lagabi the high bias, then you got to treat the other one as also like a house. Ilagabi the high bashar, and if you're going to treat it as like one as a gatehouse, so then Lagabi the high nami bashar, then you have to also treat the other one as a gatehouse. And so the Gemara does not actually answer the question of what in the world are you supposed to do in this situation. But I think you make a good point, James, that basically if you put the Eruv in the tall houses in each chutzner, so then presumably you could carry in each chutzner with house A contributes to the chutzner 1 and house B contributes to chutzner 2. Although you may need both house A and B, because if to the extent that house B can also enter into Chatzar 1. They both need to participate in both Eruvin. But the goal here was to try and eliminate that additional participation. So Hadran Allah Hadar, Hadran Allah Hadar, Hadran Allah Hadar. So we finish the 6th chapter. So now again, as a reminder, we are this chapter, the next chapter that we're going to do is going to talk all about different kinds of chatzeros that are next to each other, and what are they treated as like one chatzer, or are they treated as 2 separate chatzeros? So
before we go on, I just want to say Shalom Aleichem.
What?
Before we go on, I just want to say Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem Shalom. You got good to get in Kiddush Levana.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. All right, so Chalak Shabein Shnei Chatzeros Daled Al Daled B'tok Asara Ma'arvin Shnayim. So if you have a window that is between 2 Chatzeros, and it is at least 4 Tvachim by 4 Tvachim, and it is within 10 Tvachim of the ground, so then if they want to, they can make they can make 2 separate Eruvim if they want to. The Imratzu Ma'arvin Echad, they can even make 1 Eruv for the 2 Chatzeros. Pachos, if it was Pachos Me'arba al Arba, if however the window is less than 4 Tvachim by 4 Tvachim, L'mala Me'asara, or if it is entirely above 10 Tvachim from the ground, so then Ma'arvin Shnayim, then you can only make 2 separate Eruvim, the Ein Ma'arvin Echad, and you cannot combine the 2 Chatzeros into a single Chatzer and a single Eruv. So now we're asked, Lema Tanan Stoma Karabin Shimon Gamliel. Must be that this Mishnah is like Rav Shimon Gamliel. Because as we all remember, especially since I only gave it in the introduction a few moments ago, the Amar Kol Palos Ma'arba Kilava Dami, that he says that anything where the opening is less than 4 Tvachim, then we say Lavud and we close up that opening. Well, if we close up that opening, if it's less than 4 Tvachim, then obviously a window must be greater than 4 Tvachim. Otherwise, it's not useful at all. So the Gemara then says, no, you can actually say that this Mishnah even goes according to the rabbis. Ad kan lo pligi Rabbanan alei, the Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. When do the rabbis argue with Rabbi Shimon Gamliel? El inyan levudin. That's when you need to close something out based on lavud. Aval inyan piska. But when it comes to a doorway, an opening, a transfer, someplace to go from one place to the other, so even the rabbis would agree to if you have at least 4 by 4. So then that's considered a significant opening, and we'll consider that as if it opens and connects 2 locations. Low, and if not low chashiv, then it is not significant and does not qualify as a doorway. So
what's a good translation of lavud?
Lavud is connecting. That's the way I would. That I mean what the literal translation is. I'm trying to remember what the literal translation is. I do not remember off the top of my head what the literal translation is, but the concept is that, as you know, this is what we've been talking a lot about Lavud with the Sukkos recently, because all the walls in many of the Sukkot, especially at the Hebrew Institute, they were all made based on Lavud. That's why you had the different wires, and Lavud is the concept that essentially connects them between the 2.
So it's a minimum amount of connections that.
I actually down here the note says that lavud means literally attached. So I was pretty good that connected. I'm sorry, James.
So the concept is a minimum amount of connections that would form a wall.
Correct. That basically, if you have two things, so my hands are less than 3 tvachim apart. And so as a result, we will view the space between them as filled in, and these two things as connected. And we're going to see a lot of lavud tomorrow, specifically in the daf.
Thank you.
Sure, not a problem. So now the question is pachos mi arba. So the Mishnah said that if it's less than 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. So a second, you just said in the beginning of the Mishnah that you need to have, if the window is larger than 4 tvachim and lower than 10 tvachim to the ground, then that's the only situation. Obviously, if the second half of our Mishnah, if the window is either smaller than 4 tvachim or above 10 tvachim, it's not true. Why do you need to tell us that? Pshita, it's obvious. Kaven to Amar Arba al Arba, because the beginning of the Mishnah tells us that you need 4 by 4 within 10. So Memela you done it to Pachos mi Arba ulumala me'asara. I would know for sure that if it's either less than 4 by 4 or above 10 tvachim, so then lo, it doesn't work. So Hakamash Malan, this is how we're supposed to understand it. Taima the Kuli Lamala Me'asara. The reason is that it's got to all be above more than 10 tvachim. About mitzvah. So b'tocha Sarah, if any part of the window is within 10, so then ma'arvin shnayim. So then you can the imratzum ma'arvin echad. Then you can either do 2 separate eruvim or 1 eruv between the 2. So again, so the point is that what we're learning here is not that from the second half is that we don't mean that the window entirely needs to be within 10 tvachim, but at least part of the window has to be within 10 tvachim. So tatin laha de tanu rabbanan. So we've learned in our Mishnah what the rabbis taught in the following brisa. Kol amala me'asara, if the entire window is above 10 tvachim, so mitzaso b'toch asara, but a small portion of it is within 10 tvachim. So how do you get that? It means that only the small portion is part. So it's almost the entire window is above 10 tvachim, but we have a small portion that's within 10 tvachim. So kula b'toch asara, or if the entire window is within 10 tvachim of the ground, oh, mitzvah sola malam into miasara, but then you have just a small part that is above 10 tvachim. So basically we have the two extremes of partially below and partially above. So in both those cases, ma'arvin shnayim, you can either do 2 eruvim, 1 for each, or you can do 1 eruv to cover both. So we see that that's in fact what our Mishnah is telling. So in second, hashta kula malam asara, if once you tell me that if a little bit is below 10 tvachim, so and you said that, so ma'arvin shnayim, that you can do 1 or 2, so 2 eruvim for the 2 different chatzeros. So in second, kula b'toch asara makes a solamala me'asara mibai. Why do you need to tell me the halacha of part of the of where almost the entire window is below 10 tvachim, and only a small part of it is above 10 tvachim? Of course, in that situation, that is considered a doorway, and you wouldn't need to, and you'd be able to either have 1 eruv or 2 eruvim. So the Gemara answers, so the ein sarach omer zok tani. This case, and certainly this case, is how the Gemara is teaching, is how this brisa is teaching the rule. So we say, first of all, if any part of the window, even a small portion, is below 10 tvachim, then we can make either 1 or 2 eruvim between the 2 chatzeros. So certainly, if most of the window is below 10 tvachim, we can make either 1 or 2 eruvim between the 2 chatzeros. Okay, is that clear? We good? Good. Okay. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan. All good. Awesome. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Cholon agol. So what about a circle? So you need to have a circumference of 24 tvachim. So ushnayim umashahu mehen, and 2 and a little bit more than 2 b'soch hasara have to be within 10 tvachim. So there's a debate between Rashi and Tosfos on this point, whether this means that 2 of the 24 in circumference need to be beneath the 10 tvachim, or whether it's saying no, 2 amos of the diameter of the circle need to be beneath the 10 tvachim. And that's the second one of those is Tosfos' understanding, and that's a lot easier to understand. So we're going to go with that. So if you have 2, and because if you have 2 tvachim below the 10 tvachim line, well, then in a circle that is 24 tvachim in circumference, you will certainly have 4 tvachim of width to that circle that will be below the 10 tvachim line. And so as a result, if you imagine a 4x4 square in a circle that has a circumference of 24, you will find that you can fit a 4x4 square well within the bottom part of a circle that is 2 tvachim deep into the below 10 tvachim. So Michti. Now the Gemara is going to point out that 1 second, it doesn't need to be 24. In fact, it could be 17 and tvachim in circumference, and you'd be able to get a 4x4 square into it. So Mifti, let's take a look. Right, a circle with a circumference of 3 tvachim, i.e., it has a diameter of 1 tefach. So yeshbo berochbo tefach, right? So because we basically are going to assume that pi is equal to 3. So if you have a circle with a diameter of 1, so then it has a circumference of 3. Although the Gemara is basically saying the opposite. If you have a circle with a circumference of 3, so then you have a diameter of 1. So betray Sargim. So 1 second. So then if so, a 12 tvachim circle should be sufficient to allow for a diameter of 4 tvachim, right? 4 times 3 is 12. So if we assume a diameter of 12 tvachim, then that should be more than enough for this window to be sufficient. Essentially, we're saying you don't need to necessarily have the exact same size, but all you need is to have the basic dimensions. A circle that is 4 by 4 will have a circumference of 12. So the Gemara answers, and now we're on Ayin Vav Amud Bet. So the Gemara answers, Hani Mili, that's that formula, the Igula, is talking about when you have a circle that's inside a square. But if you have a square that's inside the circle, meaning a square that's the 4 by 4 square, then we're going to need more. So the Gemara then says, but Michdi, let's take a look at that. Kama meruba yasar alagul. How much larger is a square than the circumference of a circle? Revia. So you need a quarter, meaning that if you have a 4 by 4 square, so that gives you 16 in area, right? Or 16 actually also in circumference. And how much do you have if you have only if you're doing on the inside, right? If you have the how much was the circle that we said before? The circle that we said before was 12. So in that case, if we increase it by a third, which is a quarter of the final amount, so then the shades are sagya. So then a circumference of 16 should be sufficient, because basically you have both the square and the circle having the same total circumference. So Hanimili Igula Denafik Migo Ribua. So a second, that formula is only true when you have a circle which is inscribed in a square. Ribua Denafik Migo Igula Beinantve. But no, we're not talking about wanting the sort of the the square and the circle to have the same amount of area. We want the square to fit in the circle. So my taiva, Morsha de Karnasa. So you need more because of the corners that the circle needs to contain. So michti. So again, how much should that be? Well, then we can use back to our geometry lessons from 9th and 10th grade. So 1 second, how do we figure out the diameter of the circle that will include a square? Well, if the corners of the square all touch the edge of a circle, so then the diagonal of the square is equal to the diameter of the circle. So what is the diameter of the square equal to? Well, 4 squared plus 4 squared is 32. 4 squared is 16, plus 16 is 32. And so the square root of 32, well, the square root of 32 is approximately, what is it approximately? It is approximately 5.6. It is approximately 5.6. So a circle of 5.6, well, that means if you multiply 5.6 times 3, well, that's 16.8. So, okay, so let's see. So, so in that situation, b'shivsar nichichumsha sagya. So a 17 less a fifth, i.e. 16 and 16.8 is sufficient. So again, why did Rabbi Yochanan require a circumference of 24 tefachim? So the Gemara answers, Rabbi Yochanan Amar ki dayane de kesrei. So Rabbi Yochanan was following the judges of Caesarea. So Amar le kurabanan de Caesarea. And some people say it was the rabbis of Caesarea. To Amre, igula migo ribua riva, a circle inscribed a square is 1/4. That's what we saw before. Ribua migo igula palga, that the difference between a square and a circle that you want to have include the entire square, you need to increase the diameter by 50%. So as a result, the diameter, the edges, the perimeter of a square, by a 4x4 square is 16. And so as a result, according to this math, you need to have a circle that has a 24 circumference. Now, bottom line is, the math that the Gemara did was correct. So why in the world does Rabbi Yochanan require such a larger amount? So there are several different answers. Some people say that just got the math wrong. But the answer that resonated best with me is the fact that this is a way to ensure that it's clear that the circle will more than will comfortably be able to include the square. And so as a result, basically what it's saying is, if you were to imagine a circle and put in the lines, the cross lines in the circle, and now say we want the square in that to bisect each of the radii of the circle in a round. And if you have that, then all the math works perfectly. So again, if you take a look at the picture in Tosfos on the right hand side of the page, and you see that there's that inner square around that circle, that's within the circle, and imagine that's 4x4. Well, the point is that if we make that, if we make the bottom, if we enlarge the circle so that the distance from the center of the circle to the edge of the square is equal to the distance from the edge of the square to the edge of the circle, well, then essentially we're doubling the radius, and obviously therefore doubling the diameter. And so as a result, instead of having a 4x4 square, you end up with a circle that has a radius of 8. And so that allows that if the circle is brought down, is instead of being at the edge of 10 tvachim, is brought down 2 tvachim, then we know that that circle will have plenty of width and will certainly be wider than the 4 tvachim that we need for the window. So that is my explanation of why maybe Rabbi Yochanan was taking this approach. Again, this is a well-known mathematical puzzle that people try to explain as to why Rabbi Yochanan says what he says when it seems clear, and of course even the Gemara makes clear that the math does not actually work. All right, so now now that we've had our fun with math, so pachas mi arba al arba. So what if the window is less than 4 by 4? So that's what the Mishnah said. So Amar of Nachman lo shanu ela chalon shebein shtei chatzeros. What we've been talking about is a wall between 2 chatzeros. Abal chalon shebein shnei batim. But if you have a window that is between 2 houses, so then afilo l'mala me'asara nami. So then even if the window is entirely higher than 10 tvachim, imratzu la'arev. The 2 homes can join together in an eruv. Ma'arvin echad, and they can join together in one eruv. So my timer, what's the reason? So basic commanded malidami, because a house is basically always regarded as being totally full. So it's as if the floor is really as high as we want it to be. So now we're going to try to understand that. So Esvei Rav Rav Nachman. So 1 second, is that really true? Echad chalon shebein shtei chatzeros. Whether you have, there's a brisa that is going to seem to contradict that. Whether I have a window between 2 chatzeros, whether I have a window between 2 houses, or 2 attics, or 2 rooftops, and now or between 2 rooms. Kulan arba al arba v'tokasara. All of them need to be 4 by 4 within 10 tvachim of the ground. So in order for them to be valid windows, to combine those spaces. So 1 second, that seems to directly contradict Rav Nachman's teaching. So how do we understand it? So Rav Nachman explains, Targuma achatzeros. No. When it said the less than betoch asara, that's talking about the chatzeros situation, but all the other ones, they don't need to be the one between the 2 houses. They don't need to be within 10 tvachim of the ground. 1 second, Rabba notes that v'ha echad li katani. Everyone was said whether it's this or this, etc. It seems that all of them were supposed to have the same rule. Oh no, Targuma arba arba. When we say that the same rule applies, that all of them are the same, that's referring to the 4 by 4 aspect of the condition. But the 10 tvachim, that one is only for chatzeros. So by minei Rabbi Abba Rav Nachman. So Rabbi asked Rav Nachman, Lul hapasuach min ba'as la'aliyah. So I want to clarify. I want to understand. When you say that we treat the house as full, what are we really saying? So that I'm going to ask you, is it that we're effectively saying that the stuff in it constitutes as a that we just are assuming that there is stuff in it that allows you to reach the window? So I'm going to ask you a question from the following case. So you have an overhead window that goes from a house into the attic. So do you need a permanent ladder in order to make it considered part of the eruv as part of the house? Oh, ain't sarach sulam kavua lahatiro. Or do you not need it to have a permanent ladder? So kiamrinam besa kamandamali dami. So when we say that a house is regarded as full, so hani mili minat sad. So were these words, was this only from the side, i.e., when you're talking about on the wall of the house, about be'em solo, when you said that we treat the wall of the house as being full, is that because you're saying that the window is at the side of the house, and as a result, a window, you can move stuff up against the wall, and so as a result, it's easy to access the window at the higher height? About the M so low, but not if the window is in the middle of the house, and so as a result, you wouldn't. Dilma loshna, or do we say no? It doesn't make a difference where the window is, whether the window's in the ceiling, the window's on the side. It doesn't make a difference what it is. So Amar Lei, Nachman says, Einot Sarach, you don't need to have a permanent ladder there. Or actually, maybe you don't even need to have any ladder, but he says Einot Sarach. So the question is what does he mean by that? So Sabarmina, Reb Abba thought that he meant from it Sulam Kabua Hu de Einot Sarach, that you don't need a permanent ladder, but you do need Hasulam Arai Sarach, but a temporary ladder you would still need. So Itmar, however, it was said, Amar Rav Yosef, Bar Manyume, Amar Rav Nachman, Echad Sulam Kabua, Echad Sulam Arai, Einot Sarach. Actually, you don't need any kind of ladder. And so what is the whole concept here? So the whole point is that inside a building, basically, we always assume that stuff exists that will allow you to access any window, whether that's a window in the ceiling, a window in the wall, any window, you'll be able to access it from inside the house. And so as a result, we're going to say that all those windows effectively get treated as if they are within 10 tefachim of the ground, meaning that the spaces get connected. And it doesn't, and that's why you don't need a ladder. You don't need the ladder to be permanent. You don't even need a temporary ladder. We're going to always view the entire home as being filled up as much as necessary in order to be able to access all of the 4x4 windows that are in the home. And so as a result, we see that there's an important difference between a 4x4 window in the wall of a chutzner, where if it's above 10 tefachim, we do not treat it as if those two chatzeros are connected, and a window within from one house to another house, where we will treat it as if those two houses are connected, even if that window is above 10 tefachim. Okay, so now we're ready for the next Mishnah. So we'll finish that Mishnah and we will be done. So kosel for the day. So kosel shabein shtei chatzeros, you have a wall between two chatzeros. Gavo asar v'rochav arba. If it's 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide. So again, we have a wall between the two, and by the way, I say 4 tefachim wide, 4 tefachim deep is what I mean. So ma'arvin shnayim. So then, again, we have a wall that separates the two chatzeros. There is no door between them, and so as a result, there's no way to go from one to the other. And so, therefore, you need to have, each of them needs its own eruv, ve'ein ma'arvin echad, and they cannot make one eruv. Hayu barosho peros, but what if there is fruit on the top of the wall? So, because the wall is 4 tefachim wide, so then elu olin mekan v'ochlin, ve'elu olin mekan v'ochlin. Each one can go up a ladder and go to the top of the wall and eat fruit at that top of the wall. Okay, uvilvad shelo yoridu lamata, but you cannot carry the fruit down into the chutzner. Nifritza kosel, if the wall was breached, meaning if there's a hole in the wall, and that frankly, that hole could be intentional or unintentional. So ad eser amos, if the hole is less than 10 amos, less than or equal to 10 amos, so then ma'arvin shnayim, v'imratzu ma'arvin echad, that's effectively a gateway between the two, and we can treat them as one chutzner to make one eruv, or we can treat it as two separate chatzeros because because of the wall that exists between them. So it can be like a wall with a door, or it could be like we treat it as one total area. So they can make either one Eruv or two Eruvin. So mipnei shehu kefesach, because it's like a door. Oh, look at that. Yoser mikan, however, if it's wider than 10 amos, so then ma'arvin echad, then the space it's really just one chaser now, and so as a result, you can only make one eruv, the ein ma'arvin shnayim, and you cannot make two eruvim. So one last point that's worth noting is Rashi points out that in the first Rashi on the Mishnah, it says kotel shebein shtei chatzeros, the wall between two chatzeros, hai denachat rachav arba, that which the Mishnah talks about it being 4 tfachim wide, mishum seifa. It's mishum seifa, not that light. It's only because of the end of the beginning of the Mishnah when it talks about the fruit and eating the fruit on the top of the wall. That's why it says that width. Because it's in order to teach the rule of on the top of the wall, there are fruit. That in that situation, you cannot carry it down. Why? Because the top of the wall, which is 4 tefachim thick, is considered its own rishus. It's more than 10 tefachim tall. It's more than 4 tefachim thick. And so as a result, you have a 4x4 space that's above 10 tefachim. That's the definition of Rishus HaYachid. And as a result, it's its own Rishus HaYachid. The lo mevato, lo legabi high, the lo legabi high. And so as a result, that space is not nullified relative to either chutzner. And so as a result, you can't carry from that space on top of the wall into either chutzner. But when it comes to the being a mechitza, b'choldahu pusya have stima, any thickness is sufficient to separate this chutzner from this chutzner. The ein ma'arvin echad, and then you would not be able to have one eruv between them. So that is the story of the second one, and we're going to get into how do we get down. If we have a wall and we want to try to get rid of the wall, first we're going to talk about what do we do if the wall is not 4 tefachim thick, and then we'll deal with how we can shrink the wall so that we can consider the two spaces as if they were one space. Actually, we're going to, before we deal with that, we'll also deal with the situation of what happens if a wall is higher than tefachim on one side and lower than tefachim on the other side, or a ditch that is higher than 10 tefachim on one side and lower than 10 tefachim on the other side. What is the situation in those situations? So we'll deal with all of that. And so if you're intrigued, or if you're just interested in doing the Daf Yomi, we will see you tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning. Shabbat Shavua Tov. Have a wonderful week, and I look forward to continuing learning.
Thank you, Shavua Tov.
Is there any advantage to having the two Eruvin instead of combining to one?
The main advantage of combining into one is that you can carry from one place to the other. If you don't,
is there any advantage to keeping two?
Oh yes. Well, the main advantage of keeping two is if something happens to the other people's eruv, and we dealt with some of that. I think a short while ago, where we had this situation where you had the eruv in the inner chutzner and the outer chutzner, and the eruv was put in the combined eruv was put in the inner chutzner, and one of the people from the outer chutzner forgot to participate, and so in that situation we said that the people in the inner chutzner can sort of like say, well, we only let you join so that you can for our benefit, not for our detriment. And so we said that the people in the inner cluster can effectively close it off and keep the Eruv for themselves. So if you are, if your cluster mates are, the people who forget, so then, you may, the other people may want to not include you, or at least make sure that the Eruv is in their space as opposed to in yours. So the main advantage is if of having two separate Eruvim is that you don't have to rely on other people if remembering to contribute to the Eruv. Obviously, none of that is really relevant today because today we use Zachan Adam B'fanav, and we have the matzah in the shul, and the rabbi takes possession of the matzah for everybody. So
Gotcha.
so in most situations, when you're dealing with reliable people, most of the time it's just it's obviously an advantage to have one Eruv for both locations.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.